Welcome to Big Hearted Indie, where we empower men in Indianapolis to forge deep connections and impactful lives through authentic friendships and service. Join us as we explore personal growth, community leadership, and the transformative power of living out our faith in action. The podcast is produced by Citizen 7, and it is hosted by Greg Enos, Don Palmer, and I am Chris Spangle. And today our guests are Jeff Brown, who is the lead pastor at North City Church, and David McKissick, who is the founder of Cerebro Creative House. Both are part of Together Indie, and we're delighted that both of you are here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So, and as always, Don and Greg are our hosts here. And so, Greg, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about Jeff and David and why we're having them on today?
Well, these guys have been a blessing to Don and me, and in particular, for me, I met Jeff Brown a few years ago. We have lots of mutual friends, whether it be Dave Neff and a whole bunch of other people. We've even found more mutual friends as we've connected further in life. But Jeff has been an inspiration to me. Not only did he have time growing up in Pike Township, my township that I'm really committed to, but as you'll hear more, his church is located there, and they have a real ministry and vision for what God's doing on the west side of Indy and beyond. But then through Jeff and starting to brainstorm some things that we've wanted to partner on, he introduced me to David McKissick. And David, I got to know through Jeff related to what we've been envisioning around bringing the city together and doing things with bus tours and civil rights bus tours in particular. And that, Lord willing, will still be on the plan for next year. I won't get into that myself, but it's been through friendships that have brought us together and really excited me about bringing them today, because I want everyone to hear about their friendship and what that is meaning for them personally, for their families, and then beyond into the city.
Well, let's start there. How did you two meet? How did you become friends? Jeff, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I baptized David.
It started with the Lord.
No, man. So me and David, we had a mutual friend at the time, and this mutual friend was like, "Yo, y'all have to meet each other. You guys will like hit it off. Y'all mind each other." And I was a little skeptical, but I'm like, "I'll meet him," because the Lord said you should meet new people. So we ended up hanging out together, man. And I think within 5 minutes, I'm like, "Oh yeah, this the bro. That's the homie." And we just clicked from there. What was that? Like 15
years ago.
15
Wow.
years ago. It's crazy.
How do you remember it, David?
Same young lady was like, I have this friend. He needs a little help. No, I'm joking. No, it was the same. I was skeptical as well. I think on a context level, so I grew up in South Bend, Indiana, in the inner city, and always been grew up in church and stuff like that with my mom, and so taking my faith seriously at the time as we met, you're looking for people who may have came through the same cultural context, and so that was not something that I was familiar with. And so meeting Jeff, I was like, yo, we understand each other just on a different level, because our past, what the Lord redeemed us from and just cultural stuff, we just locked in on that front. So that's kind of how I remember it. And we've been rocking ever since.
So you said, man, I love this guy. What was the characteristics about him that you just clicked with immediately?
Yeah, so realness is big to me. Like when somebody give you their authentic self and they real, and like he said, we understood each other's stories, knowing we grew up in completely different cities. Like I'm from the inner city, Indianapolis, and that path of how the Lord took me from my upbringing and brought me to his grace to understand who he was creates this natural, like, yo, let's be real about everything.
Right.
Because that was just part of my culture. And to know that if I know God, that just makes it way easier to be real and honest, because the Bible doesn't say, yo, put these airs on, act like you got it all together. It's like, nah, like bring your mess, bring the stuff you struggle with, bring your unique personality, the giftings that you have, and let the Lord use and redeem those. And the first time I talked to David, like there was no airs. Like he was just real, honest about things. And for me, when somebody's honest and real, I'm like, okay, now we can get deep, because you kind of skip past the surface of the relationship, which a lot of relationships tend to go to. You tell all the highlights, all the reels, all the good things. But then when you know somebody, like their story, and you get the real, now you feel like, yo, no, that's my friend. I know them, and we can build from there. And that started so soon, just the type of authentic personality that he has.
What was a couple characteristics, one or two, that clicked with you? What values?
Yeah, I think I mean, it was 15 years ago. So Jeff was like, I think he was like 7 years old or something.
I know. I was gonna ask, like, was this like 2018? What
like,
age?
Put him on my shoulder. No, no, but I think just to be like, man, he's a godly dude, and so that like jumped off and like, this dude wants to please the Lord. He wants to honor the Lord. He has a vision for what that looks like at a young age, and so I was attracted to that. Like, yo, I need that. I think also just his determination to do something was like, yo, he's ready to go. I think we had aspirations. It was 15 years ago, so it was like, man, I want to see this for my life. I want to see this for my family. I want to see this for my community, and we just connected on that front. And so I think the godliness and just overall vision, we just locked in. And so probably, and two, the same thing, the like the brotherhood, like, the Bible says that a good friend sticks closer than a brother, and he's been a good friend. So it's just automatic. And like you said, it was just like, once we start rocking, we were rocking. I think we met, I was like probably around this time, like 15 years ago. And I got married in March, and so he was at my wedding. You know what I mean? So it's just like, invited him and his now wife. They were, man, y'all were babies.
That was college at the time. So that was
and so, but yeah, invited them, and literally we've been rocking ever since.
Done.
What experiences? It sounds like I think you both served in the same church for a while. Sounds like you really have both have a heart for service, serving the community. What experiences do you think deepened your friendship, or maybe what challenges did you see, in our community or in your church or community that kind of brought you together because you were co-laboring?
Yeah. I'll start. I would say from a church and like just community aspect, one of the things that I think we both seen was this need for addressing the disconnect between the world and the church. And that was something that both of us had a heart and passion for, because a lot of times you got the religious and then you got the non-religious. So you got the secular and then the religious. And most of the time, what happens is Christians end up building these walls around themselves in the church to where as though they have no engagement in the world. Like, and Jesus never called us to that. Jesus, like, you're supposed to be a light. So you should know the people in your community. You should know the people in your city. And most times, I think churches, for right reasons of trying to be built up and poured into and to get healthy, that ends up becoming these walls where we become super insular. And for us, we're like, how do we engage the community? And the fact that we got to be on staff together at church and just connect from ministry made those opportunities way easier. And I remember for me and him both, I had never wanted to be a pastor. But what had to change for me is how I understood how the Bible defined a pastor. A pastor ain't just somebody that preaches on Sunday morning, but a pastor is somebody who shepherds and cares and helps lead the people to be able to engage not only one another in church, but also the community. And man, he would just challenge me on stuff that I knew I needed, of like, all right, Jeff, you know what? You killing it. You know all the theology. You killing it a lot. But don't forget, bro, you still got to be able to reach and translate that. So it'd be even just stuff like that. His just natural gifting of seeing who people are, that I knew I had somebody that while I'm learning things, he could also see my blind spots. And that was helpful for me in ministry, because ministry, most of the time, man, people will say, man, praise God, you gave a great sermon, you gave this. But if they don't see your life in totality, how do they help you grow as a leader and as a pastor and as somebody that's in the community? And he provided that for me in a lot of ways.
Go ahead. Yeah. Please
answer. I think I was going to kind of say the same thing. I think the thing that connected us was, for me, would be to have somebody that you can have your back against, regardless of what's going on, somebody that has your back. And Jeff provided that for me in that time. And I think too, on a community level, just seeing, it's literally what he was saying. Like, how can we take what's happening in the church, what's happening in our hearts, right? And like, we've seen a ton of brokenness in our communities, in our families, and how can we use the truth of the gospel, the truth of the scriptures, to be able to address those things in real, authentic ways, and not just provide this like Jesus antidote in the sense of just like, yo, Jesus is going to fix it, or Jesus is the answer, which he is. Yeah. But what does that mean? And how do you flesh that out? And Jeff, I think, when we would talk and connect, it was always this practical side of, here's the theology. And also this is how it's lived out. And that's helpful for me. I like theology and I like, the big words and all that stuff. But at the same time, it's like, okay, now how does that change us? How does that change our community? How does it change how we serve, how we love, how we care for the least of these? And so
give us an example.
I'm gonna give you a real clear example. So when we were on staff together, we were two African-American men from the inner city on staff of a very predominant white, probably more wealthier.
Do you want to say the church?
Yeah, so College Park Church. I think most people know that when they know us.
So Fisher's area.
It's at Carmel. So it's in Carmel.
Okay.
Technically it's in Carmel. And man, even that alone, how does that fit? So we were helping for a while from a staffing standpoint of how do we help this predominantly white church be more effective in the broader community? Because technically College Park sits on the edge of Carmel and Indianapolis. So even when you think about our 5-mile radius of the church that we were at the time, it's a really diverse area. So how do you take the truth of the gospel that we believe that we're called to be one from every ethnic group, every socioeconomic background, whatever, and how do you take that truth and make sure it can apply to the different people in your community? Not just the ethnic side of it, but even unchurched people.
Right.
And a lot of times where churches struggle, they'll either be a heavy emphasis on like theology and building up Christians, and they don't know how to translate that to the unbeliever or to people who are unchurched.
Yeah.
On the opposite side, they emphasize the unchurched so much, they're really evangelistic, but they don't know how to help Christians grow in maturity. And I think for us, with the uniqueness of learning how to navigate in a predominantly white church that's trying to grow in diversity, we were able to take some of the very same things that our relationships did and apply that from a staff level from projects. So we were like,
I'd love to hear more about that, because I'm sure there are a lot of people listening. I'm thinking about a very specific example in my church that we talked about earlier. Like, how do we engage more, and what was the process at College Park that you both engaged in? How did you engage unchurched people of different backgrounds? What was that strategy like that you've pushed in the church?
Yeah, so one of the things that we locked in on was, like, I believe in pre-conversion discipleship. I don't know if you're familiar with that terminology, but
explain it just in case someone isn't.
Yeah, so I believe that when Jesus called the 12 disciples, they weren't trusting in Jesus, but he was like, "Yo, come follow me," and he showed them discipleship or knowing God is wisdom, right? So the process between not knowing God and knowing God, this gap right here, I can walk with you, and it's not just cracking open the scriptures. It's about also making decisions in wisdom to make your life better or more. Or to ensure the flourishing of your life, right? And so we locked in on that. And so how it played out is one thing that we did together, and this is before they did. I mean, they just did it, but we did the trunk or treat for College Park. This was like 4 years ago, and so we were like, "Yo, we're gonna do a trunk or treat," which seems really, it's a trunk or treat, but we wanted to be intentional and say, how can we serve and love the community? So let's set up a space and place where there's safety, where there's candy, where also we gave out free diapers and kids' clothes. It was like, oh, how do we serve and allow, instead of people, and granted people have to come to the church, but now we're becoming a resource to the community so people can come, we can serve, and we can walk with people wherever they are. In this particular case, it was mothers that we were kind of focusing on, single mothers. And families, like how does College Park become a space and place where people can just come and have an easy on-ramp to the church? And also the people at the church, what does discipleship look like for how to engage with these people? And so there was training on that. There was thoughtfulness on that as well, so that we can begin. I think oftentimes churches are like, what's the return on investment on that? I hate to,
hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's the business world coming out. But like, if we don't see it clearly, it's sometimes a struggle for us to invest resources into it, where it's like, man, on a biblical standpoint, our return on investment, we may not see on this side of heaven. And so, that's one example where we locked in.
Well, I mean, even on the example too, you would just hear a trunk or treat, but on the back end, like he said, all the different workings, and this is where I think both of our gifting came in, kind of to show in this example, is you got to think for not only the people that are already at church. You have to engage them, make something practical for them that they can do. Because a lot of people at our church probably never had ministry in Indianapolis. So most of their probably involvement is in Carmel. So we use like 2 indicators where we were stationed at. You had Target and Walmart. Walmart was on 86th and Michigan Road. Target was on 106th and Michigan Road. Completely different experiences. And how do you take and have an event to where so it can draw both people from Walmart and Target, but also a space where our church, they can have a practical on-ramp to serving and building in a community. So you got to make sure they're prepared for that. If they meet somebody that they've never engaged with before, just culture is different. We naturally all gravitate towards people that are like us. So how do you engage with somebody who's different than you, come from a different background, in a way that it's not repulsive, but also it's genuine? Yeah. But then on the opposite end of how do you get people who would never come over to 96th Street up in Carmel to feel like, oh, I can come here and not feel like I'm sticking out like a sore thumb. So the way you do the environment, the different things that we had, like certain like the diapers and stuff, we had the different attractions, and you had to think about that strategically. And this is where I think both of us were able to help and lead this team to be able to serve our community.
I think there's also some wisdom in just like adding the awareness to the 106 target audience of, hey, you should think about the Walmart piece. I think that's also helpful. Greg?
One thing that's really unique about you guys, you're both entrepreneurs. I want to hear what shaped you, hustling in South Bend and Pike, that shaped you as an entrepreneur, and how have 2 entrepreneurs come together within the church where many young men in particular are leaving the church or they won't even come through the door of a church. How is that entrepreneurial vision and spirit being realized to really do what God's calling you to reach the people of our city? So share both fronts there.
Yeah, so on an entrepreneurial level, I think I grew up in a single parent household in poverty in the projects. And my mom, she worked hard, loved the Lord, most godly woman that I know. But I just seen her grind. You know, I seen her, you know, there's this vivid memory that I remember. It was in South Bend, we get lake effect snow. So we have lake effect snow and ice. And I remember my mom trying to make work and her running to catch the city bus and her slipping and falling, and all her stuff goes everywhere. She picks it up and she makes it onto the bus. And that's like branded in my head. And so I just knew working hard. I dropped out of high school and back got my GED, but I had to find ways to make money. You know, I've been on my own since I was 15. And so been working 40 hours since I was 15 years old. And so I knew that I'm taking a non-traditional route. And so to be able to maximize the provision for my family, I had to use the gifts that God had given me to be able to provide for myself and for my family. And so like when I was 15, 16-year-old, we were throwing house parties. And so I would go in and make the flyer for the house party. I would create the menu for you could buy these drinks and these chips, and then set up the entire house, like, you know, taking Christmas tree lights and putting them in different rooms. And we had VIP. You had to pay more. This is a house party. I'm like 15 years old. We made like $2,000. And I was like, oh, we can do this, rinse and repeat, you know? And so when I kind of start seeing, okay, there's value here. How can I do that? And how can I use? And God has just kind of took those giftings and then using corporate jobs to kind of be able to look under the hood and say, oh, this is how this works. This is what scaling looks like. And taking that and applying that and seeing the benefit of that. And then also applying that same vision and heart to seeing, like, I have a passion for men knowing Jesus, but also, like we were saying earlier, for it to affect every area of life. And so how can we get creative on that front so that now church isn't just this mundane thing that I do on Sunday, but it is Jesus and his love for me should trickle into every aspect of my life. And what does that look like? And how do we get creative with men in particular to bring that about so that they can stay engaged on every level when it comes to the relationship with Jesus?
Any thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah. It's funny. I don't even think I naturally think of myself as like an entrepreneur, but I just love people. And I think that's what it boils down to for me. I think anybody that knows me will tell you that I just gravitate towards people. I can have a conversation with a stranger on the side of the road out of nothing. Because I've always, ever since I've been a kid, just loved hearing different people's stories. Like, there's power in understanding that everybody you encounter has a story. Yeah, right. And that story is powerful. That's led me in every single area that I've ever been to, whether it be work, business, church, family, whatever. Everything has led from my engagement with people. So then you think about the entrepreneurial side. I think my heart is like, yo, if there's something that's not happening that should benefit people and everybody has that desire, but nobody's actually doing it, let's utilize people as the greatest resort to get that started. And that's kind of where, even from a church planting aspect of why I was at this church, College Park, serving 4 or 5 years as a pastor. But my heart was like, you know what? We've all collectively said that we know that Sunday 11 o'clock is still the most segregated hour of the week. So why don't we try to not just help our churches change that are already established, but we probably need to either start more churches or get some churches that just need their culture changed in order to fulfill this need. And the same thing with stuff in the community. So I think for me, my heart for people was just like, all right, let's see it happen. And then on the backside of that, what I've always seen is there is this supernatural aspect that takes place where God speaks life into things that we would have never done on our own. So I think this is kind of where the business people, y'all able to tell me this. You look at the return of value, what works, look at the statistics, like who's your target audience? Because if you do these things, 1 + 1 means 2, and it'll add up. What I've seen in my life, especially from where I came from and just the way his hand has been all over my life and my relationships, God takes 1 + 1 and makes it 25. Or God will take something that doesn't make sense and produce it because the heart was what he commanded us to be, is love him and love people. And even when it may not make sense on the front end of, hey, you know what, that shouldn't work. And it happens. And I think our church has just been an example of that at North City Church, where we got people that are conservative, liberal, white, black, Latino, young, old, rich, poor, somebody that's been in prison before, somebody who grew up in the Midwest nice home, and they're all collectively coming together, worshiping Jesus. And people ask like, yo, how's that happening? I'm like, it's God. Don't give me the credit. Yes, I love people and I'll lead this and I'll share this vision. But more than anything, I think there's a faithfulness of trusting that if God calls this good, when we put our feet to the ground and our hands to the plow, it will work because God said it would. And that's kind of what I've seen in my life.
Has there been a time where I could see the energy that you two have, like it coming together? It's just like it spirals up. Like you two are like work on each other to produce great things. Like, what are a couple things that have come out of your friendship that, man, I'm really excited about this. Yeah, you should do this. Let's do that. Like, what are the maybe 1 or 2 things you're most proud of that came out of the friendship aspect of it?
The friendship aspect. I know I mentioned this early. Like I rode past College Park like 3 days ago, and I seen their sign for the trunk or treat. I was like, me and Jeff like came up with that. Like, and I know that it was a blessing to the community. And you know, they had called me, asked me my thoughts, kind of helped them with some things, even though I wasn't there. But like, or this is a while back, but like it was just dope. That's one dope thing I think. And then also I was able to do the rebrand and the messaging for North City. And that was something that we worked close together on. And it was like a surreal moment because it was like, yo, all of the things that we've talked about, our hopes, our desires, things that God placed in us is coming to fruition. And we have an opportunity to use our giftings and Jeff's vision to bring that about. So those probably the 2. I could probably keep going, but
let me put that out on the
and the website's gorgeous. And I went to the website, I watched a sermon. I'm like, man, this looks like Joel Osteen money. It's just, it really is impressive. The website, the brand, the way that it's like, it's all really great. And you could tell the vision that you have is so perfectly put into that website.
To follow up on that, you certainly we're talking about making disciples and reaching the unreached, right? But outside of that, in our community, if you had a magic wand, what problem would you solve, or what would you attack to help the vitality of the city, or to have, as earth as it is in heaven?
Yeah. So I would say the main thing that we could benefit from in the city aspect is collaboration. And this is what I was going to even just say from the last point to the question you asked. One of the things that I've seen with our relationship is the way that we have authentic friendship. We know one another, but we also challenge one another. And both me and him have big personalities. And when you put two people with big personalities, usually that's an explosion and it ain't gonna work. But when there's humility of like, oh, this person's big personality can challenge me and we can grow and do more together than apart. Yo, we got stories of us beating each other up verbally or whatever, jokingly, but serious, like where we've gotten into it and hashed it out. But that's refined us. Because usually when one of us is gonna challenge the other person, it's for the sake of us to be mature, to love our families well, to love our kids better, to love our community better. And I would say that's just a micro example of collaboration for the city that I think we have to learn. Most of the time, we get so consumed about what's happening in our own world. Churches do it, businesses do it, that we don't want nobody else to get the glory. We won't have the humility to say, you know what? If I take my big personality, take my big vision, and sometimes have to dumb that down a little bit to collaborate with somebody else so that more can happen, let's do that for the sake of greater good. And I've seen it in our friendship, but I've even seen that the more we start to take that and reflect that to other people. So Together Indy, for example, we're doing this where there's at least 10 leaders from different churches, different organizations. I'm sure every person on that leadership team and the people that come to those meetings are the big personalities. But we're saying, yo, what does that look like, us coming together to collaborate? And I think that needs to happen at the city level, the business level, the nonprofit space. And here's the thing, that doesn't mean that we eradicate all of our individual giftings and desires or our individual missions. There are some things that, you'll probably have to do it on yourself because that divide will be there. But if we're honest, a lot of times we can collaborate way more and do more for the city if we all have this collective desire for the greater good of our community. So that's one of the main things I would say.
Oh, that's good. Mine's probably a little more tailored, and I think collaboration is huge. And I think it's actually a part of what, for me. So when I was 18, I had very low literacy. So I was reading at like a third grade, fourth grade level at 18 years old. When I learned how to read, my life changed. And so if I could wave a magic wand, I would probably use the resources and the relationships and the businesses that are just killing it in the city to come behind specifically Black boy literacy. I think it's a game changer. And so I think to be able to have programs around ensuring that young Black boys can read, and also mixed with a little pre-conversion discipleship piece on what manhood looks like, I think that would greatly benefit our city. And I'm not going to say that all the issues that are happening in Indianapolis are happening because young Black boys can't read. That's foolishness. But it's personal to me, and I've seen the benefit over and over again in that space. And so if I could probably is what I probably have 8 more or 9 more, but that's near and dear to my heart.
So, and I would just add, even to what David said, one of the things I've seen with him, he didn't take the traditional route to be the expert in what he's an expert in, which I learned this because I got to see it with him. He's like, yo, I was a high school dropout. And, for me to see that, and then other people to witness what I've seen in his life, it's been several times where people who went to school for 4-year, 6 years, degrees or whatever in the same exact field, and they'd be like, well, how do you know this? Well, I learned myself, which for me, I was actually the very same way. I got kicked out of school. I got expelled probably 6 times from elementary up into high school. My learning style was different. The way I learned and took in information, I didn't find that out until I became a Christian at 16. And then I had a passion for learning about God that I was like, oh, that's the same way that I actually learn, which I'm more of an auditory visual learner. Right. And understanding how people learn and where their giftings lie can even help us to change the community more. And I've just seen that as an example of his life. I agree.
How has your friendship impacted you as dads? Talk a bit about your families. You brought it up, but I'm going deep now. Yeah. Tell us about your kids, your wives, and how has your friendship either helped or hindered? I don't think.
Let me start
the family side.
Yeah, let me reset the table for just 1 second. Yeah. We've got folks on the Zoom. If you want to ask a question, type it in the chat. So we want to hear from you. We'll take your questions here in a little bit. And if you're listening later, we have in heartbeat.chat, which you can find the link on citizen7indy.com. You can go and join the group. You can join these discussions, ask your questions, and then they air a week after that. So let's talk about the marriage first, and just, when you start, give us a background on how you met your wife, your kids, but how has tell us a little bit about your family, and then how your friendship is impacted. that.
Yeah. So I'm married, been married for 10 plus years now to my wife, Sarah. We have 4 beautiful kids as well. 7-year-old, 4-year-old, 2-year-old, and 1-year-old. 3 girls. The boy's the oldest.
One on the way, right?
Hey, yo. Chill. I don't know if the Lord called me to one more, bro. No, that ain't top secret. He trying to speak something that ain't true. No, I think we done. Okay. Unless the Lord say something different.
When you enlisted the ages 4 very close, I'm like, oh, he's tired.
Yeah, but exhausted. So that's our family, man. I met my wife actually at church. And that's my family. I don't know if you can show your family.
Yeah, so I've been married for going on 13 years to my beautiful wife, Rachel. I have 3 children, 11. That's my baby girl. And then my son, 9. That's my baby boy. And then my baby girl, she's 4. 1 bringing up the rear. So, yeah.
And 2 on the way.
I'm not trying to catch up with him. I lost. If we're playing, if it's a game, I lost, and I'm fine with losing.
To help our audience, as men, how do you encourage each other to love your wives as Christ loved the church, and how to raise your kids with different issues and things that come up?
I'll start with the kid piece. So David was one of the first guys that challenged me on love. Here's what I mean. So like, I grew up, where I would say a pretty good loving family. Like my pops, like I've never questioned if my dad loves me. Like, but my dad comes from that old school generation where men don't really show affection like that. He's there for you if you need him. Yeah, love you, son. That's what you'll get, but never really super affectionate because that's not what men do. So early in our friendship, bro, David texted me. We hadn't talked for a little bit. I'm sure I was busy. And he texted me. He was like, miss you, bro. And I read that text message like, what? Man, I'm a grown man. Don't be telling me you miss me. Like, you ain't my girl. You ain't my wife. Text me. I was uncomfortable. Like, I did not text him back. Yeah. So then he called me and he was like, hey, you see my text message? I was like, yeah, bro. It was weird. Like, why you text? He like, nah, you my brother, man. He's like, nah, I miss you as my brother. Like, one of the first men that challenged me to be like, it is good for men to love one another in a very masculine way. Not in like this. No, in a masculine way to love. And that was like the snowball effect for me seeing that maybe there is some unhealthy ways that I view masculinity that leads forward. So fast forward. Our relationship changed. I'm like, hey, love you, bro. Miss you, man. I had a son. I don't care what nobody says. God wanted to sanctify me having a son. I wanted a son. I couldn't wait. I'm like, man, that's going to carry my legacy. My son name is Jeff the Third, so we call him Trip. Like, that's my guy. Yeah. But it wasn't until, man, for the first 2 years, my wife would make comments. She was like, babe, hey, you got to make sure that you're loving Trip different and maybe being more intentional in the way that you love him. Because sometimes you can be just kind of aggressive. And I'm not in a bad way because I've always loved my son. I'm affectionate to him. And I tell him that. But just the way that guys do it. Because in my mind, I'm helping raise him up one day to be a man like me.
You want to be tough.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, and I know that there's the extremes of that. So I'm not the extreme. So I think I'm good. Like, I don't abuse my kids or anything like that. So I don't do that. I'm just thinking my wife is being a woman. She's just saying it for me like, babe, you don't understand it because you're a woman. Y'all operate differently. You do that with the girls. So it was one day, my son, he was like 3 years old or so, maybe 4. And I would always tell my son, I'll be like, son, that's not a big deal. Like, what are you crying for that? Don't cry about that. You just got to toughen up, man up. And, and I'm telling this to a 4-year-old kid. Mind you, I love my kid and I'm trying to prepare him. So I'm just like, yo, it's not that big of a deal. You didn't get candy. Why are you crying about it? It's all right, toughen up. Because in my mind, when he gets older as a man, you don't have the privilege to be crying like that. Especially when you got to take care of your family and be strong for your family. You can't be crying like that. And I got to raise him up young. So my wife had been challenging me on that. I wasn't hearing it the best because I'm just thinking, you know what? She's just softer because that's how women are. It's cool. One day my son is upstairs in the closet and he won't come out. So my younger daughter, who's 2 years younger than him, was like, hey, dad, hey, mommy, daddy, Trip won't come out of the closet. He's sad. He just won't come out. So my wife goes up there. I'm listening around the corner. And she said, hey, son, what's wrong? And he's like, I popped my balloon and I'm sad about my balloon. And I don't want to come out because I know daddy's going to tell me it's not that big of a deal. Don't cry about it. When I tell you, man, like, as a father, like to be like, hold on, that's not what I'm trying to do. I don't want you to think your feelings don't matter. because I'm a grown man, and
Right.
sometimes I'll be like, people don't care about men's feelings.
Yeah.
But in my desire to prepare him for the world and love him, I was snatching away something good for my son. Yeah. Here's the thing. The only man that showed me that it's okay to have feelings as a man and tap into them, my best friend. So I'm like, bro.
David, where did that come from within you?
I'm an artist. So I think for me, I'm the oldest boy of 4 in my family, and I didn't have a place to put my feelings. And so I saw what that did to me. And so there was a heightened sensitivity to like being able to understand what's happening on a heart level and being connected on a heart level, and really introspective at a young age. I'm like, what's happening? And so I think I'm able to kind of project that into a situation, and just be like, and two, I think my name is David. And so I was named after David in the Bible. And so you see this warrior, but you see this warrior and poet, right? So you see this guy who would chop Goliath's head off, and then you will see this guy on the other side crying out to God. So I was able to see that and be like, yo, there's a spectrum of what it means to be a man. And if this is the man that's after God's heart, right? Like there should be more nuance than just I'm the guy who cut off Goliath's head, right?
Yeah.
So I think it came from that, and just engaging and interacting with that for sure.
Not to be indelicate, but I saw a Channel 6 piece about your dad and the rap song that you did about your dad, and that lack of a father in your life. Like, were there father figures that helped you along the way, or guardrails? Like, because I'm sitting here thinking about that story that Derek Thomas did, and you were mentoring him, right? And so where did that strength come from?
Great question. I think there were men for sure along the way. But honestly, and to answer the original question, like how has our, relationship affected, these different areas, is I think it comes from my friends. Like I always look, and oftentimes I'm like, we kind of like the Lost Boys in the sense where it's like we figuring it out, trial and error with each other. And we had the scriptures to do that, and we have men who went before us and did that. But oftentimes the if we're on the phone, I like the metaphor, you hear swords clinging because we're going back and forth with reason, and we're trying to figure it out. And I think the how Jeff has impacted my family, my life, I have no reference point of what it looks like to be a father, what it looks like to be a husband. And so I can look over, even though, there are men that went before, I could look over and talk to him and hit him and be like, yo, bro, this is what's going on. And because the wisdom that God has gifted him with, he can speak into things and walk alongside of me. And I think for me, I've messed up so much, and he's been consistent. Like he knows everything about me, like the good, the bad, the ugly, and to show up time and time again and just be like, bro, I got you. I'm gonna help. We're gonna figure this out. We're gonna work through this. I think it comes through that, right? Too, like, having a reference point, a close reference point of like, yo, we figuring it out. We're using the scriptures. We figuring this thing out together. And two, for me, I knew what it was like to not have a father in my life. And so there's easy to, quite frankly, have an idea of what a father is because of the lack of what I was missing. And that's by God's grace, because that's not everybody's reality, right? Like people may not know what they're missing and not be able to pinpoint like, all right, a father's supposed to be this, even though, and so for me, I always took pride, like, yo, I want to be a dad one day, because I didn't have
help
that.
me out here.
Yeah, so much of this reminds me of Don and Steve from last podcast. I mean, that intentionality. I mean, Don, that's great
our
stuff.
society, we've never been more lonely than we ever have.
Yeah.
There's more people that are working from home, and the percentage of people that say they have one close friend has, dramatically plummeted. Yeah. So you guys have, had some really cool dynamics of friendship. I'm sitting here, I'm in the audience, I'm thinking, I don't really have that kind of friend. I'd love to have that type of friend. What advice, what thoughts Obviously, some things are chemistry, but what would your thoughts on
I think
actions you could take to hopefully enable that in your life?
Yeah, I think that every beautiful thing that you have or that's worth having comes from God's grace and intentionality. And I think that, I always tell men, because this is a like people, last night on the way home, I meant to tell you this, last night on the way home, my son, we were talking about switching him schools next year. And he was like, no, I want to stay. And I'm like, why? He was like, because I have this one friend that like, this is my boy. And I was like, we'll make sure that you guys stay connected. We'll make sure like that's going to happen. And y'all can go on to be long friends. And he goes, like you and Uncle Jeff? And I was just like, yeah, like me and Uncle Jeff. But I say that to say that intentionality is the key. I think one, like if you're listening, you're like, yo, I want that. I think one, like ask the Lord for it. Like, trust him with it. And then two, intentionality. How intentional can I be to find men that I can rock with, that I can do? One of the things Jeff said this early on is I'm not saying go and be vulnerable and throw up on everybody, but once you have that, like, yo, like begin to meet with people, begin to just get coffee, get breakfast, get drinks or whatever your thing is. And you'll begin to see, man, the Spirit will begin to show you, like, yo, I can be honest here. I'm committed to being honest in any space. I try to be as honest, and you'll see that like, I got a friend right now he's actually a part of Citizen 7 that we just, like, in the last month, 2 months, we just kind of dove in. And we're sharing stuff. I'm sharing stuff in my life. He's sharing stuff in his life. And it's a safe space. And like, I already know, like, we're going to have a really deep friendship because I've been intentional. He's been intentional to call, to get, to hang out, and then also to encourage one another and be honest with each other. And so it just creates this really organic thing that produces some really sweet fruit. So that would be my encouragement.
I would also say, if you're somebody who desires friendships and you don't currently have them, and maybe you've struggled a while having friendships, you probably need to find out why. Now, I get called in my friend group as the honest person. Everybody know if they come to me, they'll know I'm going to be honest.
Blunt?
Yeah,
Blunt?
I'm going to try to diagnose and be honest with you. But because unless you're honest about what's going on, you won't find out what the pattern is of why you keep ending up in the same place.
Yeah.
So maybe that's asking some people who know you better, or maybe even finding some professional like coaching to be able to be a little bit more self-aware of why you struggle finding friendships. Because a lot of times there's something leading to that. There's probably an insecurity or fear or something that keeps you from being vulnerable enough to step out or to actually let friendships go deeper. If you can diagnose the root cause of why that is, then you can move forward in making friendships. Now, you may not be the extrovert person, and that may never be you, and that's fine. But God created us for community. Yeah. None of us are meant to be alone. That's why everybody has a desire. Even people say, I like my alone time. Yeah, that may be true, but all of us still love companionship because we were created for that. You might need to find out why that is. This I was KB Kristen. I know she got some dope work that she's done here in the city. I help people as a pastor, but find a leader or somebody that knows how to diagnose people well to tell you maybe some of those root causes, some of those things that prevent you from diving into deep friendships. Because if you can address that, then you can start to say, you know what, here's a first step. Here's how I put myself in the networking places or the friendship gatherings to start meeting people.
And here's a tough one, a curveball for you. So obviously Greg and I are much older than you, and we're not of the same skin color. How do you go about, if one of your core values is really embracing the diversity that the good Lord gave us? How do you go about creating friends with folk that are different than you?
Yeah. I'll say this. Let me just use you an example. I actually talk about Greg behind his back.
We all do.
Yeah.
Let's just take a moment to appreciate Greg. Greg, you were so missed at the last C7. Everybody, where's Greg? Where's Greg? Where's Greg? Everybody's like, how'd you meet Greg? You just do such a beautiful job of connecting people, and it's such a wonderful. I do too. Like, everybody I talk to, like, Greg's great. Greg's, yeah.
Well, and I use these men, both Don and Greg, as an example a lot. So let's just pause on the ethnic, the racial context, because that's hard enough itself.
Right.
I use a different example. Now, you fellas both got me by some years, right? I told Greg this one of the first times we met up. I'm like, Greg, you know how hard it is for somebody my age, a millennial, to be able to talk to somebody like you and feel like we actually connected. Because most of the time with that age gap, like, let's just be honest, even the church business world, most people in kind of my age bracket, they're like, well, the older people, they gatekeeped. They made us say, wait until your time, sit on the back seat, and they would never cross those generational lines because you just had to stay in your place. Well, Greg, I seen the complete opposite. Greg, I'm sure he got wisdom from just sheer age that I don't have. But that's not the way he comes to me.
Right.
The way he engages with me is like, yo, there's things that Jeff has that I don't have, and I would be wise to listen and learn from him. Now, here's a reality. Most people in my age bracket, because they felt that resistance from the previous generation, we closed off that. We like, you know what? Well, if you ain't gonna let me in, I'm gonna just rebel and do it myself. So we don't pursue those relationships anymore. We just do our own thing and start it fresh. But what does it take? It takes people that are intentional to step across those barriers. And that's what both of us has done, which is I'm like, yo, these are my guys. Like, my favorite old school people, like, because of their humility. Like,
Humility is the key word.
It is. Yeah. And so you take that and throw that into the ethnic side. Bro, there's so much history when you talk about racial tension in the world, especially in America. Like, we cannot eradicate all of the past traumas that's taking place in here.
Yeah.
But what we can do is say, if I have the humility to even know that there's things I don't understand, things that we may even disagree upon, but I got the intentionality and humility to reach across and say, hey man, I just want to learn. I want to hear. I know you got benefit. I tell people that. I'm like, bro, if you see somebody who's different than you, because they have a story, because they're unique, there's something you will learn from them from just having intentionality. So one, I think you need bridge builders to the people who don't maybe have that experience of dealing with people. Let the bridge builder say, you know what? I'm going to connect it here. I'm going to make this a little easier. I intentionally live in these different spaces. So you find bridge builders. I think all of us will probably be in that space to help those relationships happen, because they're not going to happen intentionally for most people, because people are so nervous about being with somebody that's different.
And taking some risk, having some courage to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
David, thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. I think you have to place your love on people. Like, it's easy to be transactional in relationships. And so if I'm different than you, it is the easiest thing for me to do is to not engage, is to, when I feel, oh, there's something different or there's something awkward or whatever, for me to back up. But if I place my love on you, it's like, yo, I found this person, whoever it is, man, I'm gonna place my love on. I'm going to, again, going back, I'm going to still be intentional. I'll be intentional if we don't have common ground, if we do have common ground. And I can think of some people right now that's just like, I'm so grateful that I did not give up on that relationship when it was awkward or when it felt like we were not connecting, but I pressed through and placed my love. Like, I'm gonna still call you, I'm gonna still text you, I'm gonna still check in on you. And now there's fruit from that relationship. And I think, you know, me and Jeff's relationship, one of the things that's dope is he can see things that I can't see, and I can see things that he can't see about each other and just what's going on. And then I think whenever you add an extra layer of diversity, maybe it be age, maybe socioeconomic status or ethnicity, you get that same effect where it's just going to be something that you don't see or that is helpful or a way that somebody can be a blessing to you, and vice versa in those relationships. And so I hold a lot of stock in, you know, in those type of relationships and just placing love on people and being intentional. Like, I'm not giving up. It's going to have to get way more awkward than this before I walk away from this relationship and I want to pour there.
So before we take our question, I think more than any other conversation we've had, you two dream together.
Yeah.
What does that take?
Vulnerability, I think, because dreams can be weird. You know what I mean? Like, it could be like, yo, this is what I want to do. And it's like,
this is stupid.
Yeah, and two, it's like, man, like, I think that it takes asking questions, believing, affirming, the things like, if you would have because 2024 has been a great year for me, and a lot of things that we dreamt of are happening, like, in real time. And I think it takes just being honest. And I think it takes time too. Like, for me to open up and really pour my heart out, like, and be like, man, this is what I want to see. This is my heart for this or my heart for that. Like, it takes time. And two, people who are honest with you. Like, yeah, you want to do that, but come on, you're not doing these things. Like when I did my first album, this dude would call me, I think, every day and be like, you working on a song? You in the studio? You working on a song? You working? And so I gave him my dream and told him my dream, and then he held me accountable to ensure the very thing that I wanted to see bring about, and we were able to see that, and it's a lot of that happening now. And so I think those things.
Yeah. Well, so with the dream, with the dream too, dreams are so far out there that they only going to become a reality if you do the hard work to make them come. And a lot of times we're all struggling with our own lies that we believe in our head. Yeah. So I take, for example, for what he just said, like dreaming, sometimes he forgets the dream he had because he's questioning if he's inadequate in order to accomplish it. Yeah. So I know that as a friend, and he know I'm on your head, bro. Hold on, no, like press in, like God has called you this. You can do this. Boom, and he'll just be like, you know what, you're right. But if you have a dream, you got to have people to help steward that dream that you have. Yeah, they'll tell you on the front end if it's unrealistic. Like I'm like, nah, that's stupid. You can't do that, bro. You think you could be LeBron? LeBron's the GOAT for y'all who question. But something else that I know him well enough, boom, I'm like dream, and vice versa. For me, I know I've had to take some people to be like, yo, are you trusting and going to take this leap of faith? I'm way more conservative when it comes to stuff. Like I play, like I am the person that I'm just like, I'm gonna do what I know will work. But to push me to get to the dream state, it takes people like David, who this is where I can talk about Enneagrams, different personalities and stuff. He'll tell me like, bruh, nah, man, shoot for the stars more. You ain't got to play it safe. So I think even having that dynamic of friendships and different people in your life, they know when you need more reality or they know when you need to be challenged to dream a little bit bigger is really helpful.
Love that. So Jeff Koreski asks, how have your leanings and your friendship with each other affected the different leadership and relational spaces that you occupy? So what have you learned in your friendship that led you, I'm doing this, that, maybe, or different spaces that you probably didn't expect to be in?
I'll start with this one. This is something recent too. I think Jeff has encouraged me. So because of my own personal insecurities and inadequacies, I tend to be like, he talked about collaboration value. And for me, I'm like, I got stuff that I don't want people to know that, I dropped out of high school, or, that comes with a connotation to it. And so I'll just do it myself. And I'm y'all want to help me? Okay, cool. I'll do it myself. Right. And I've seen success doing that. And then there's this portion of it where in the midst of that success, the effort and the energy it took, if I would have just been like, yo, I probably should collaborate, or I should probably ask questions. So Jeff has really challenged me to be like, yo, like network with people. And so for me, I struggle even there because I'm like, I'll be in my head. What do I say? And so I've had the opportunity to just kind of go with him to networking events and just watch him work the room and and just be like, okay, he has this. Okay. And then be able to ask him, this is me. I'm 37 and that's even can be uncomfortable, right? To just be like, yo, when you said this or when you did this, what's your thought process on this? Oh, why do you do that? And he's able to just be like, yo, I do this because of this, or do this because of that, and you need to do this because of that. And so I think that's a strong suit for him, his ability to connect with people. And so I've been able to learn from that, and it's been very helpful in businesses and to how I love my wife. Like I'll call him and be like, she's saying this and and he's like, yo, just say this, say that. And I'm like, why? He's like, because of this. I'm like, oh, okay. And I go back and it works. And I'm like, okay, he's gifted it in communication, and I need to glean from that and see the benefit and the fruit of that. And so, yeah.
Well, and here's the thing, like even those examples you used, I only say what he already feels and knows, but maybe in that moment, because of the frustration, whatever, struggles to communicate. I'm like, bro, this is what you're actually saying. I know you may respond. And even on like some of the networking stuff like that, I'm like, bro, that's already you. Like all I'm doing is telling you who you already are for you to walk into that confidence. Yeah. And here's the thing. I'm not putting nobody in any spaces or any position that I don't think they can handle.
Right.
I'm like, this is you already. You just got to trust and believe who you are. And brother, work shows for itself. So even for us, like it's easy for me to be like, yo, you should talk to David for this. Same thing. I've done it with Greg. I tell Greg, I'm like, yo, you know who you need to talk to? Greg Enos. Oh, because that's already them. Sometimes you just need somebody who maybe is connected. And I'm a people person. I love people. regardless of what giftings people would say I have, I think one of my superpowers is just let me connect you with somebody else because I think y'all get together and do magic. Or you got a weakness that they have a strength, and if y'all came together, oh yeah, this about to be good. And that's where I just think we all got to do a better job of collaborating through that way of helping connect people.
Yeah.
With that, I have one last question.
Yeah, go for it.
What are you guys dreaming up for the future? What's your coming together looking like over the next few years for in the city?
You go, man.
So I'm lead pastor of North City Church right now. If I'm dreaming, this is what we dreaming. And the funny thing is we are already starting to operate through this with some of the people at our church and in the community. Our heart for our next season of our church and our ministry is to take some of the beauty of what's already happened. So when I started at this church a year and a half ago, I think it was probably about 30 so people that were there, predominantly white. And over the last year and a half, we've more than quadrupled our size. And now our church is crazy diverse, socioeconomically, age, ethnicity, everything. And not just in the way it looks, but even the way that it feels being at church. And people are connecting, like lives are being changed, relationships are changing. People who said, I would have never talked to this person, we're doing that now. My question for our church leadership when I first came was, how do we take this and allow this to actually not just be what happens at our church, but impacts the city? So for the next season of our church, our hope is when we end up getting our building, and that's our plan, is to get an actual space. We're leasing a space now, is to have a facility for our church to meet at that becomes a way to connect with the larger city. Most people get churches for just their church. I'm like, nah, we need a space that our church can use, but has a way broader target of connecting with the broader community. So what it helps do is this meeting place where we'll meet at will be something that not only helps out other churches or other not-for-profits, but even local business people. So for us, as we're dreaming right now, is how do we utilize our church, the resources that are there, the people that are there, and even our heart for the city to do something that impacts more than just our little tribe called North City Church. But we'll take the beauty and the resources and the wisdom we have of being bridge builders to now create a space that does that for the city, not just Christians, but non-Christians as well. Yeah, we're going to be explicitly Jesus-centered, but at the same time, we're going to do stuff that's good for the community too. So even people who may not know Jesus, they'll see the fruit of it, like, yo, this is dope. We want to be a part. And Lord willing, hopefully some of those turn into people who said, you know what, maybe I need to find out who this Jesus is.
David? And
that's it. I'm rocking with that.
plug the church. How do we find out more about it?
Yeah, so check us out, northcity.us. You made our website. Is that it, bro?
That's it. Yes.
Okay.
I'll put it in the show notes. You can grab that link. Don, Greg, do you want to share thoughts? Anything you'd like to add?
No, this has been powerful. Thank you for your love for Jesus, for each other, and for us.
Thank you for having
Brothers
us.
for life.
Appreciate you guys, man. Thanks for letting us.
Yeah, I
be
want to
here.
be friends with you guys now. So, all right. Thanks so much for joining us here on Big Hearted Indie. If you got something out of this, the best way to help spread the word is just to share it with your network. Share it on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Text a friend. How about we do that? Everybody text a friend. Said, hey, listen to this. Let's be pals. So thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you check out the website, citizens7indie.com. That's with the number, and we have a new website, so check that out and get connected. Thanks so much for joining us here on Big Hearted Indie.